I was never one to believe in haunted places. But when Liv and Jules suggested we explore the old Glendridge Castle, I'll admit, I was curious. The place had been abandoned for decades, and it had that allure. Mystery draped in age-old secrets, walls whispering stories we couldn't hear. I'd seen photos of the castle online, with its stone towers and sprawling gardens. From the outside, it looked like something out of a fairy tale. But the town had its stories about what happened in there. No one would tell us why it closed, only that it had been abandoned overnight and left to rot. It was late October, perfect for this kind of trip, and Liv had convinced us that we'd be fine. "We'll be in and out," she kept saying. "A couple of hours, and then we can laugh about it over pizza." Liv had this energy that was infectious, almost reckless, and Jules was right there with her, fearless as always. I couldn't say no. The entrance was overgrown with thorny vines, and as we forced our way through, I noticed how everything seemed off. Like, I know it was old, but it felt more than that. It felt as though the castle was holding its breath, as though it had been waiting. Once we were inside, the chill was undeniable. The walls seemed to press in on us, and our footsteps echoed, bouncing back from the walls as if there were others lurking in the shadows. We ventured deeper into the castle, finding hallways that twisted and turned, almost like they were trying to trap us in a maze. Liv led the way, her flashlight sweeping across the cracked tiles and peeling wallpaper. "Come on, you guys. It's just an old castle. Nothing's going to jump out at us," she laughed, though her voice sounded forced. But then we heard it, the sound of something scraping along the floor behind us. We all froze, not daring to turn around. In that silent moment, I could feel my pulse racing. And when I finally gathered the courage to look back, there was nothing. Just empty, dark space. "Did you guys hear that?" Jules whispered, her voice barely audible. We nodded, trying to brush it off as the wind or the old structure settling. But in my gut, I knew it wasn't just the wind. I felt watched. The deeper we went, the more things changed. Hallways led to dead ends. Rooms appeared empty until we'd step in and feel the presence of something just beyond our sight. At one point, we found a grand ballroom. Dust floated in the beams of our flashlights, and it almost felt like the room was frozen in time, as if people had just left mid-celebration. But there was no explanation as to why. Liv thought she saw a portrait shift, like the woman in it turned her head to watch us. We laughed it off, nerves, right? But as we moved away, I swear I felt the eyes of that painting following me, piercing, watching. Then we found the staircase. Winding, spiraling down into darkness. It was as though it beckoned us, daring us to descend. And so, despite every instinct screaming at me to leave, we went down, deeper into the castle's belly. The air grew colder, and a faint smell of mildew filled our noses. Liv was in front, Jules behind, and I brought up the rear. Halfway down, Jules grabbed my arm, her fingers like ice. "Did you feel that?" she whispered. Before I could answer, the lights went out. Our flashlights flickered, and then nothing. Just blackness, thick and suffocating. I reached out, hoping to grab onto one of them, but my fingers brushed against something cold. It wasn't Liv. It wasn't Jules. I pulled back, shivering. Suddenly, a voice, a low, whispering chant, filled the air as if from every direction at once. I could make out fragments, words that sounded like another language, something old and sinister. My heart pounded as I realized I couldn't tell where Liv or Jules were. They weren't answering my calls. I was alone, drowning in darkness. Then, just as quickly as it began, the lights returned. I found myself back in the ballroom, standing alone. Liv and Jules were gone. I called for them, my voice echoing in the empty space, but there was no response. Just the endless silence of the castle, as if it had swallowed them whole. As I turned to leave, my eyes caught a glimpse of the portrait on the wall, the same one Liv had seen earlier. Only this time it had changed. The woman's face was now staring directly at me, a twisted smile on her lips. And standing beside her were two new figures, their faces unmistakable. Liv and Jules. What I felt after that, I can't describe. I just ran. Out of the castle, down the path, through the trees. The whole time, I heard footsteps behind me, never close, but never far. When I reached my car and drove away, I didn't look back. But in the rearview mirror, I saw 3 figures watching from the castle's doorway, fading into the shadows as I left. To this day, I don't know what happened to Liv and Jules. But sometimes, at night, I dream of that castle and hear that whispering chant.